Waukesha County Metro Drug Unit, Brad Schimmel, saw the oncoming drug crisis early and worked with county law enforcement and EMS to make sure the county conducted thorough and effective investigations that hold people accountable for delivering the drugs that kill. Now, under Schimmel's leadership, Waukesha became the second largest source of heroin submissions to the Wisconsin State Laboratory and led the state in successful Len-biased drug homicide prosecutions. Also, in his first 9 months as the Attorney General, Schimmel's office launched a statewide prescription painkiller abuse awareness program. It's called Dose of Reality. You've probably heard of it. It will save lives by creating awareness, much like what we're doing here tonight. Now, Schimmel has also directed the Wisconsin Department of Justice to conduct training in successful drug investigation tactics for law enforcement and the deployment of life-saving drugs like naloxone, opiate overdose. The Wisconsin DOG, under Schimmel's direction, organizes and conducts biannual statewide prescription drug take-back days. Please, everyone, give a warm welcome to Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel.
Back in 2013, we had 50 people die in this county from accidental drug overdoses. When are we going to take this seriously? This is not going to work. I don't know if it's on. Try this. Now it looks like it's on. I bet that's what does it. These are Wisconsin numbers. These are Wisconsin opiate-related deaths. I'm going to talk in a second about what opiates are. But look at that go. We've gone from 2013 with a 500% increase in opiate-related deaths in our state. Can you imagine what we'd do if traffic crashes went up by 500%? We would put a roundabout every 200 feet. We would get really crazy and raise the driving age to 28. We'd lower speed limits to 15. We'd do really crazy things. But look at these numbers and ask yourselves, what have we done? Come on, be my friend. Well, I have it on now. There we go. Now it's going to catch up. This is really frustrating. What we're doing with the Dose of Reality campaign is we are going after the myths. And the number one myth when it comes to prescription narcotic painkillers is that these must be safe because they're prescribed by a doctor. Flip that around. The reason why you have to get a prescription for these is because they can be dangerous if they're not used properly. That's why a doctor has to write you a script for them. So we're going after this myth with the Dose of Reality that prescription narcotic painkillers kill more people than heroin and cocaine combined. I swear there's a slide that's going to come around. Yeah. What's that? All right, there we go. You see the numbers. Heroin's down at the bottom. The orange, cocaine or methadone is the red, all the way up there, that blue line. That's the number one drug overdose. It's coming from prescription painkillers. Another myth we're going after is people like to think this can't touch their house, that this is just the bad kids. Well, I met a lot of parents of kids, a lot of parents who buried their children right here in Waukesha County, and now I've met hundreds of them statewide. Hundreds and hundreds of parents who've come to me. They have shared with me stories about who their children were. And I want to tell you, out of all those hundreds, I have yet to meet the parents who thought their kid was the bad kid. And in fact, some of them have been very persuasive in convincing me their kids absolutely were not. I had one set of parents share with me their son's transcript from high school, right here in Waukesha County. He had a 4.0 when he graduated. He didn't make it to 20. He was dead before he was 20 from a heroin overdose. Think about it. That hit those parents so fast, and they wanted to know from me what happened. It's a long story. These are what we're talking about. Those pills, that OxyContin 80 milligram, they sell for about $1 a milligram on the street. So in your medicine cabinet, if you have those, you have a little bit of a gold mine in there. Very tempting thing for young people. It's got to do the backhand. Another one of the myths is that people are getting these things from drug dealers on the street, or they're getting them from some doctor who's doing something improper. The reality, the dose of reality is that the vast majority of them are getting them from a friend or a relative. 71% almost get them from a family member or a friend. Either they stole them or someone shared their medications. 70%. The root of the problem are these painkillers. Nearly 4 out of 5 heroin users started by abusing prescription painkillers. These are very hopeful numbers. Think about it. If we can make 70% of the drugs available in our homes stop being available, then we get rid of 80% of the heroin problem. Maybe we don't have to talk about heroin anymore. The good news in this is that every household in our state has a role to play in solving this problem. Use your medications only as they're prescribed to you. No sharing. If you or someone else has pain that warrants taking a narcotic prescription for it, you shouldn't be self-prescribing that. You should be going to talk to a doctor. If your pain warrants that, a doctor should be involved. Number 2, store them safely and securely. None of us would take a loaded handgun and leave it on our kitchen counter with teenagers coming in and out of our house. That would be foolish, recklessly foolish. And yet, how many people think about what's sitting in their medicine cabinet? And what's in their medicine cabinet is killing a lot more people than handguns. So, use them only as prescribed to you. Store them safely and securely, and when you're done, get rid of them. Get them out of your house. You have no reason to hang on to them. And on this, I want to depart with some positive news. Wisconsin's getting it. We've been doing drug take-back collections now for several years, and each time it goes up and up. In April of this year, we collected over 64,000 pounds of prescription and over-the-counter medications that were safely incinerated. That is 3 semi-trucks full. We just had our most recent drug take-back again on Saturday, and this time we collected about 56,000. We expected it to start going back down. 56,000 pounds. All told, in the course of the last 2 years, we've collected well over 200,000 pounds of medications that have been safely destroyed. That's net weight. That is many, many semi-truck loads, over 100 tons of medications that we don't have in our water supply, making life really crazy for us, or diverted for people to abuse on the street. Do the right thing. Take your part in solving this. It's one piece you can do in your homes. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schimmel, for that. We now want to get into what Stairway to Heroin is all about. It actually began as an effort to address the growing opiate and heroin use among youth and young adults in our communities. No community is immune from what is being now called an epidemic in many areas. In Wisconsin, here are some numbers for you. Opiate-related deaths have increased by 500% just in the last 15 years. Now, these shoes on the stage, you've probably seen these and wondering what they were. They serve as a reminder of the 190 people in Waukesha County who have lost their lives due to drug overdoses between 2012 and 2015. Tonight, you will hear more startling statistics regarding opiate and heroin use in our area. You will learn how easily accessible these drugs can be, how highly addictive they are, and the devastating effects that they can have on young people and their entire family. But you will also hear about hope and healing tonight. All of us have the power to make some change in our schools and our communities by arming ourselves with some information, knowing the challenges that our children face, having conversations early on about drugs and alcohol, and knowing where to get help if your child or someone you know is struggling with substance abuse. Now, we want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here tonight and joining us, because in doing so, you are making the commitment to our children and to our community as well. Now, before we get started here tonight, we'd also like to acknowledge those involved in making tonight's presentation possible. Thank you to the Waukesha School District here for hosting this important community event, and to the Waukesha County Community Foundation for their financial support as well. Rosecrans, which provides mental health and addiction services in Illinois and southeastern Wisconsin, and Your Choice, which is a nonprofit group dedicated to reaching our youth with the knowledge and skills to make the best choice and remain substance-free, our sponsors here tonight, who have created a lot of awareness about Stairway to Heroin, the educational series, with the purpose of bringing about the awareness, the education, and the prevention of alcohol and drug use among our youth. We also want to thank Rogers Memorial Hospital, a leader in comprehensive behavioral health care treatment for children, teens, and adults, also a sponsor here of Stairway to Heroin programs. Also, thank you to all of our speakers this evening for sharing their expertise, their time, and their personal stories with us as well. And we do want to acknowledge all of our resource fair participants for providing the info here tonight on their programs and services. You probably saw them as you walked in. A list of all the resource participants that you saw listed on the back of your program, if you want to take a look at that. If you did not have an opportunity to visit the resources table out there, they will be available following the presentation here. We also want to say thank you to Albanese's for the meal that was enjoyed by some of the committee members and the speakers here tonight, so thanks for that. And most importantly, thank you to all of you for coming out here this evening to hear this important message, and for being a community who cares about the well-being of our youth today. Our goal this evening is to provide awareness and information, and offer hope and inspire continued conversations about this topic. We know that there is much work to be done here. We anticipate that you will have a lot of questions after tonight's presentation, so please refer to that resources tables that we told you about, and also the ones located in your folders for more in-depth information on the signs, the symptoms of substance abuse, factual information on the various types of opiates and other drugs, as well as where you can go to get help. And one last item, when you came in this evening, you received one of those half-sheet surveys. Your feedback, very important to everyone here, so please take a few minutes to complete that survey before you leave this evening. And our first presenter this evening is sharing one mother's experience with all of this. This is her personal story here tonight. Please welcome everyone, Melanie.
When you become a parent, you have many choices to make. The most important one being, what will you name them? I chose Alexis. You will make many more decisions over the years. For example, babysitters or daycare. We had a lady named Anna. Public school, private school. We had public school. And then there are silly yet trying decisions, like whether or not to pigtail for the first day of school. We did not pigtail. Before you know it, they're off to sleepovers and you're buying prom dresses. Nobody ever thinks about the decisions or choices that you have to make at the end of your child's life. For instance, would you donate your child's organs? Would you bury your child or have them cremated? What would their last outfit be? Where would you hold their funeral? What would you do with all of their things? And how would you ever live without them? On September 22nd, 2012, my 17-year-old daughter, Alexis, tried heroin and overdosed. I received a phone call at 2:28 a.m. from her boyfriend telling me that my daughter was in an ambulance and headed to the hospital. He told me that it wasn't good and that I needed to get there right away. I'm not gonna lie, I hung up on him thinking that it was some kind of a sick joke. He called back right away and repeated the exact same thing and swore that he was telling the truth. The next few hours are still a blur to me. So much happened in such a short amount of time. When I arrived at the hospital, they wouldn't let me see Alexis. They just put me in this little room and told me that they were working on her. I'll never forget the first time I did see her. My beautiful little girl, all hooked up to these machines and tubes running in and... Whoop. Tubes running in and out of her lifeless body. I knew then that I would never look into her eyes again or hear her goofy laugh. I knew that I would never hear her say, "I love you, Mama," again. Within a couple of hours, she was transferred to Children's Hospital in Madison, and it was then that my journey as the mother of the girl that OD'd began. I'd like to share with you some of the things that I was thinking and feeling on the longest 2 days of my life. I wrote this while I was sitting at UW Children's Hospital waiting for some test results to come back to see if Alexis had any brain activity. Longest, worst day of my life, and I'm sure it's far from over. Please, God, tell her that she can come back to us. I'm sure you have plenty of angels already, and you don't need to take mine too. I promise you that I will do anything you ask of me. She's just a baby, hasn't even started living her life yet. I know you've performed miracles before, and I know you can do it again. Don't take her from us. We just don't know how to live. The test came back that Alexis had no brain activity. That's when I had to start making those choices that I mentioned before. Making the best choices for my daughter. Choices that I felt she would have been okay with. One of the hardest decisions was whether or not to donate her organs, and if so, which ones. I wrote this while I was waiting for the organ donation team to come and take Alexis away. It was a decision that I never thought I would have to make. It literally was the last time that I would be able to touch my daughter's warm body, to hold her hand, or play with her hair. As I sat there staring at her, I was wishing for a miracle and begging God to take me and bring her back to all the people that loved her. Sitting here, waiting for them to come and take Lex, so she can give her healthy organs to someone who needs them more than us. How did we get here, Peanut? How on earth did we ever get to this point? I never thought I would be giving pieces of you away. It all feels like a dream, little girl. Any minute now, you're gonna sit up, throw your arms around me, and say, "I love you, Mama." Please wake up. This is it. This is your last chance to live. Here they come. I can hear the gurney coming down the hallway. They really are going to take you. How do I let you go? How do I ever say goodbye? I can't. I just can't say goodbye to you. I want to change my mind and keep you just like this, but I can't. I have to let you go. I have to say goodbye. Please, Alexis, I beg you, this is your last chance. Please, just wake up. She did not wake up. And that's a picture of the last hug that I ever gave my daughter. Those decisions that I had to make, well, I donated Alexis's kidneys, her lungs, her long bones, and her huge heart. Her funeral was in Jefferson 4 years ago. She wore a cute little cheetah print dress that was her favorite, and she was cremated. All of her things are in boxes in my garage still. And how do I live without her? The same way that you guys would try to live without your child if they made a poor choice. Throughout history, many triumphs have come out of tragedies. I never thought I would be able to say that I've triumphed from the tragedy of losing my daughter, Alexis. But standing here in front of you all is my triumph. Sharing my daughter with you is my triumph. And saving just one life or one family from my pain is my triumph. Thank you.
Melanie, thank you so much for sharing that incredibly personal and powerful story with us all here tonight. Next, we want to introduce Dr. Tim Westlake. He has been a full-time emergency physician for more than 17 years now. He is the medical director of the Oconomowoc Memorial Hospital. Tim is also the vice chairman of the Wisconsin State Medical Examining Board, where he serves as the chairman of the Licensing and Controlled Substance Committee as well. He also serves on the State Controlled Substances Board and is a member of the Governor's Task Force on Opioid Abuse. Being a father of 2 teenage daughters himself, Dr. Westlake also has a personal investment in his commitment to the health of our youth. Please, everyone, welcome to the stage Dr. Tim Westlake.
Good evening. Thanks for coming tonight. I'd like to share a little bit of the perspective, a little lecture on the medical perspective on opiates, as well as some of my regulatory experience. The shoes that we have up here are representative of all 190 people that have died in Waukesha County in the last 3 years. They're actually toe tags with the person, where the person died and what they died from. There's an estimated 15 million prescription drug abusers in the United States. Last year there were 9 billion Vicodin prescribed just in the US alone, and over half of those are estimated to still be lying around. 55% of drug abusers and drug users get their pills from friends or relatives, so-called leftovers. And 2/3 of teens say that it's easy to get these medications from their parents' or grandparents' medicine chests. Prescription drug overdoses have now surpassed car accidents as the leading cause of accidental death. There have been 166,000 deaths from prescription drug and heroin overdoses in America in the last 20 years, which is more than 3 times as many people died in Vietnam. The volume of prescription opioids prescribed has gone up 400% in the last 20 years, and the percentage of drug-related deaths has accordingly gone up 400%. Every day, 2,500 teenagers abuse a prescription drug for the first time. 90% of addictions start in the teenage years. If a person hasn't developed an addiction by age 23, then when the brain is fully formed, then they're a lot less likely for that to happen. So if you can get through that process to that point. 20% of parents report having given their child a prescription medication that was not prescribed for their child. Teens that abuse prescription opioids are 20 times more likely to abuse heroin. Again, in our community and in our country, you're statistically more likely to die of an opioid overdose than a car accident. There's a death every 24 minutes on average in America from opioids. So opioids, a little bit of the history of it. Opioids are natural pain relievers. They stimulate neurotransmitters that are there in the brain that give you euphoria and hide pain and give you a sense of well-being. They've been around for millennia, for as long as human history is recorded. There have been opium-related painkillers. It stimulates neurotransmitters that then have euphoria and kill the pain. Around 150 years ago, they took opium and they reformulated it. First, they started with morphine, and then they did heroin, and then other prescription medications. This is a morphine-based cough syrup from the 1850s that was widely used. This is a throat lozenge with cocaine and morphine. And this is an ad for a cough medication that's got heroin. Each time that the drug companies, that the pharmacists came up with a new formulation of an opioid, it was always touted that it was going to be safer than the previous ones, and usually it ended up being worse. So how common is it? 1 in 5 teens has abused prescription drugs or has used prescription drugs that weren't theirs. 1 in 3 teens, an alarming statistic, feel like it's not really a big problem to use medications that aren't theirs. And 10% of high school seniors, high school students, have used a prescription medication that's not theirs within the last month. Again, the common thread with prescription drugs, I think, and where people really make a mistake is that, people view prescription drugs as being safe. So you come to me, I work in an emergency department, you have a painful condition, I give you a prescription, you take it home, and then it's no big deal. It's just like, it's like taking a Tylenol or something. But it's not. It's like taking heroin. Most people would never consider taking a street drug like heroin. They wouldn't shoot it, they wouldn't snort it, they wouldn't smoke it. But taking a prescription pill, that's something that was prescribed, seems like it's a lot safer of a route. The thing is that our bodies are affected exactly the same. So that when the chemical gets broken down in the digestive system, it goes into the bloodstream, goes up into the brain, and then affects the brain the exact same way that heroin does. The way that people get addicted is that when your brain receives these neurotransmitters, they actually stop making the natural ones. So if you take prescription opioids for more than 2 to 3 weeks, your brain actually doesn't make any more. So then that's where all the withdrawal comes from. So the intention of getting high doesn't come into it. It doesn't matter why you take them. If your brain is exposed, you will get addicted to them. 80% of heroin addicts start using prescription medications. It's more like, I would say it's closer to 95% of teenagers nowadays. People start with pills. Usually that's the pathway. Start with pills. Pills are expensive. Like A.G. Schimmel said, oxycodone is $1 a milligram. That you might need 80 milligrams a day. That's $80 a day. You can get the same thing from about $20 or $30 of heroin. So it's purely an efficiency. If you need the medication, that's the best delivery mechanism is heroin. Then you're going to take it. You're going to start maybe snorting it, maybe smoking it, and eventually you're going to shoot it because of the cost driver. We don't see a huge amount of heroin in teenagers. So a lot of you are parents out there, and you think, well, my teenager would never do heroin, and that's probably true. They might, but they might not. But taking a little pill, they might do that, and that's how it starts. We see the heroin deaths around age 20 is when we start to see people dropping. One of the things, if I could have like one take-home point that I would want for the audience tonight, is that prescription opioid painkillers equals heroin. So when you get that prescription, it's like Attorney General Schimmel said, when you get that prescription, you wouldn't leave a lying gun loaded around. You wouldn't leave a bag of heroin lying around in your house either. But that's what we do. We have a bottle of Vicodin that's left over from a wisdom tooth surgery or a knee surgery. You leave it in the medicine chest. Percocet, a few extra, we'll save them, we'll keep them for later, squirrel them away, who knows when you'll need them. But what's happening is they're being diverted, and our kids are getting hooked. And then that's leading to heroin, and then these are the shoes. You may think, what's the harm? The kids, what's the harm? One little pill, don't be a wuss, come on, take a pill. There was a gentleman who also speaks at Stairway to Heroin. His daughter took 1/2 of a pill. She took a half an oxycodone. She was drinking a little bit, was a good student, honor student in college, had a few drinks, which impaired her judgment. Her friend wanted her to take a pill. She didn't want to take the whole pill. She took half a pill. Her friend took the other half. Well, she thought she was taking just one pain pill. She was actually taking an extended release 80 milligram oxycodone, which is effectively 60 times more potent than one pill. So she took 60 pills, and it was in the half a pill format, and she never woke up. That's the thing, is that you never know how much you're taking. The kids are getting these medications on the street from a dealer. This is what we see. Withdrawal. So heroin and opiates, what they do is they stimulate the euphoric center and a tremendous sense of well-being. So when you take that away and you have none of those neurotransmitters, it's the opposite. So it's like a living nightmare. And that's what drives people to use. Abscesses, collapsed veins, infections. You wouldn't think, this can't be that common around here, right? It's Waukesha County. It's one of the richest counties in the state. I see people all the time with teeth like this, with skin like this. infectious disease, renal failure, if you live, once you start, if you're able to get into treatment and recovery, if you live, there's all kinds of medical problems that can happen afterwards. So you may have heard the story about the woman that was pimping out her 16 and 17-year-old daughters for drug money. The opioids are so powerful that when you start using them, they completely hijack your brain and take over all sense of everything, supersedes even the parental instinct, which is probably one of the most deep down embedded instincts that we have as humans. Strips that away. You have a choice to not take those medications or those prescriptions or those, those drugs. Once you take them enough, you don't have a choice anymore. Again, heroin addicts don't start out with being toothless, scab-covered, homeless, selling all their possessions, stealing from their families, prostituting themselves. But you open that pill bottle and you take that pill, and that is a step in that direction, potentially. I equilibrate it, or make it equivalent to a game of Russian roulette. So you got, someone offers you some pills. It's like putting one bullet in the chamber of a revolver. You spin the revolver, you take the pill, you get high. There's nothing in the, you don't get addicted. It was great. You had a great time. You felt great. You do it again. And each time you do it, you're loading more and more bullets in the chamber. And eventually, it's going to land on a live round. And then I'm going to talk to your parents because we're putting you in a body bag, and these shoes represent you next year. So these are some crime scene photos of overdoses. I work at Oconomowoc Memorial Hospital. I've worked there for about 16 or 17 years. And what I've seen is that the prescription drug epidemic there's no respecter of boundaries. There's no difference between whether you have money, whether you don't have money, how old you are, how young you are, your race, gender, it doesn't matter. It respects nothing. It just destroys. Again, my daughter, I have two high school daughters, a freshman and a senior, and they used to watch some of the Youngblood, I think, vampire stuff, and I look at it like opioids are like vampires. Once you invite them into your life, into your house, then they can destroy you. But if you don't invite them in the door, then they can't get in. How often do I see it? The last overdose I saw was last Friday night in the Oconomowoc Memorial Hospital emergency department waiting room bathroom. A patient was waiting to be discharged, went in the bathroom, shot up, passed out. Luckily, when he passed out, because he completely stopped breathing, when he passed out, he knocked over the coffee machine, the door opened up, knocked over the coffee machine, and the registration clerk heard the commotion, and we went out and resuscitated him, got him back. If it had been 10 more minutes, so it was a quiet night, there wasn't a lot of people there, his brother got there about 30 minutes later to pick him up. If he didn't knock that coffee machine over, his brother would have come in looking for him, he would have opened the door to the bathroom, he would have been dead. That was last Friday. I saw 3 overdoses from different scenes on one day this past summer. The last kid that I saw that overdosed, this was a 42-year-old man that overdosed last week. The last kid that I saw told his friend, I'm going to shoot up. I have Narcan in the house. If you come in and I'm not breathing, give me Narcan. Well, his friend came in 40 minutes later, and he was dead. Nothing he could do. Again, get another pair of shoes. The first time I saw this, and I think where it became personal for me, I've been involved in emergency medicine for about 20 years, including training, and I was an EMS before that. So I've seen heroin overdoses for 30 years. But the first time it was personal, it was a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Carolyn. She was EMS coordinator at the hospital. Her son Josh was in recovery, was doing well. He relapsed, as typically the case is, and took too much prescription drug, too much heroin. His friends were concerned because he overdosed. They didn't want to get caught. This was about 7 years ago. They put him outside in his underwear in February. EMS picked him up. He was picked up by the paramedic that picked him up had been his babysitter when Josh was a kid. Brought him into the emergency department. And I sat there with my friend Carolyn after we couldn't bring him back. And we talked, and when we were done, I pulled out a bag exactly like this bag, which is a body bag. We zipped him up and took him down to the morgue to be autopsied. So you may ask, why? Why all of a sudden is there's the problem? It wasn't a problem 20 years ago. What's the cause? So as a medical regulator, I'm on the medical examining board. Why are all these opioids being prescribed? It was a perfect storm. I'll give a little bit of explanation behind that. A perfect storm of things that came together to influence it. So there were new formulations of narcotic medications that came to market about 20 years ago. OxyContin was one. Usually in the past, the pain medications lasted about 4 hours, and so they were short-acting, lower dose. OxyContin came to market. It lasts 12 hours, and it's up to 20 times as potent as normal oxycodone. There was a big educational and advertising push for these medications. I remember I was in residency in medical school when the shift happened. In the past, you would only prescribe chronic opioid medications for people that had end-stage, end-of-life problems, people that had pain, bone pain from cancer, and you knew that they were going to be addicted to medicine, but the risk of the damage that would cause in their life was much better than the pain they would suffer if they weren't on those medicines. The lid came off the box back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So again, you have these new formulations of medications. There's a huge increase also at that time in the supply of heroin. 20 years ago, heroin was maybe 10% pure, 15% pure, and now the detectives will talk. They're seeing 80% purities. You're also seeing synthetic opioids. When you hear there's been a couple of cases, I think just last week in northern Illinois, and there were I think 4 overdose deaths, and that's from fentanyl, which is 80 times more potent than morphine is. And morphine is equivalent to heroin in their potency. So you've got fentanyl, which is 80 times more potent. You've got another analog called carfentanil or wilfentanil, and that's 10,000 times more potent than morphine. So you get a powder, you don't know what it is, you take what you think is a normal amount to get your fix, to keep from being sick, and it's actually 2,000 times more potent than you think. And again, as a society, we have little tolerance for discomfort. So we need to kind of reset our expectations. I tell people when they come in the ER, you broke your wrist, it's going to hurt, it's going to stink, you got to take anti-inflammatories, you take Tylenol, you take opiates only if you can't sleep, only for a short amount of time. Again, too many narcotics are being prescribed. There's a prescription drug monitoring program, which is a database, computer-based database that looks at all the prescriptions that are done for all patients in the state, and there's different states have different PDMPs, so we have the ability now to get the data to see who's prescribing what and how much and to whom. We never had that availability before. HOPE legislation you've heard about is legislation that's aimed at the regulatory piece. So how do we kind of get the pieces in place that we can fix the solution? We've got the best state legislation. I think it's modeled in the rest of the country with John Nygren, whose daughter is a recovering addict, who's at the helm of that. We've got this Wisconsin State Coalition for Prescription Drug Abuse Reduction, which is coming together of different pieces. Attorney General Schimmel is leading it, Medical Examining Board, the legislature through Representative Nygren, all coming together to figure out how we can best drive the prescriptive change. And again, what we're doing in Wisconsin is being modeled by other states. But if you never take the drug, you won't get hooked on it. That's the other message. So I'm gonna zoom ahead. I'm running out of a little bit of time. So don't take as little narcotic as possible. So just kind of deal with the pain and take it only if you can't sleep. Two Tylenol and 4 ibuprofen in a normal-sized adult is better than taking oxycodone for pain. Dispose of your unused medications. We need to not just reach for a pill when we're uncomfortable. Sometimes we just have to be uncomfortable for a while. And as a physician, as an emergency doc, I wanted to be an emergency doc since I was 4 years old, and I want to help people through their pain, but I don't want to put them in these shoes. Again, 2 Tylenol, 4 ibuprofen, 3 times a day, more effective than oxycodone. The goal of narcotics is just to have it be tolerable. It's not to make you feel great. Again, parents have a choice. So you get prescribed a medication you're not comfortable with, don't fill the prescription. Talk to the doctor. How many pills are you given? Why do you need to give the pills? Is there anything else I can take? So you can be in control of the interacting in the physician. I never take it offense if someone asks me, do you think they really need that? Take home, last slide, prescription or prescription medication, prescription opioid medication is heroin. That little bottle of Vicodin is a bottle of heroin. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Westlake, for your medical expertise and your insight on the topic here. I want to introduce our next speakers this evening. From 1991 until 2013, Sue Opper served as the Waukesha County Assistant District Attorney, working in several divisions, including the Juvenile Division, the Traffic Unit, the Domestic Violence Unit, Misdemeanor and Felony Unit, as well as the Drug Unit. From 2014 to 2015, she served as Deputy District Attorney, and since February of 2015, she has served as the Waukesha County District Attorney. We also want to welcome Chris Cole tonight. He is a detective with the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. He has served on the Waukesha County Metro Drug Unit, in which he has experienced firsthand the damage that has been caused by the proliferation of opioids and heroin. Chris is also passionate about his work, but even more passionate about providing parents and the community with the information that they need to prevent our youth from going down this road. Please welcome District Attorney Sue Opper and Detective Chris Cole.
Thanks, everybody.
Good evening. I'm Detective Chris Cole from the Waukesha Sheriff. What qualifies me to talk to you tonight? I've been a cop for 20 years in this county. Spent 12 years working narcotics, 5 years with the DEA. In fact, my former boss is here, Bob Bell. He has a booth set out there. Fantastic guy, taught me a ton of stuff. I'm a past president of the Wisconsin Narcotics Officers Association. I live narcotics, okay? Not only that, my youngest brother just got out of Rosecrans, out of rehab. He's a recovering heroin addict. 62 days clean today. These tears are real because I live it, professionally and personally. I'm a sheepdog. I'm not a sheep. I protect people. I solve problems. But I couldn't save him. I don't know what to do. So anything I tell you tonight is not an answer. You gotta research yourself. I can't teach you this. We can't teach you this in 20 minutes. You have to empower yourself to get on the internet and know more about this stuff than your kids. The last thing I want to say before Sue speaks, and you'll see that Chris dominates the conversation. Sorry about that. And I apologize to the Spanish translator because I talk real fast. You guys are so lucky in this county. Since I've been in law enforcement, you've had Brad Schimmel as a district attorney and now attorney general, and Sue Opper. This is a fantastic district attorney's office. We prosecute crimes. There ain't a lot of passes in this county. It doesn't happen. And that's what you guys want. You don't see it every day. I see it every day. So I wanted to thank both of them personally.
Yep, thank you, Chris. Thanks to all you parents and community members for coming out tonight. It is so important that you're here, and I echo the sentiments that Chris has shared with you already. The slides and some of the stories we're going to show you are real cases, mostly from Waukesha County. This stuff is here. It's in your neighborhood. It's in your kids' schools. It's everywhere, and you need to start getting yourself ready for that. Look out for it. We're going to show you a few things you can look for, what to watch for, and then start to recognize it, and then do something about it. These shoes are real Waukesha County students and kids.
Okay, drugs. They've always been around. Heroin's been here since the 60s and the 70s. The biker gangs were running it back in the day. It's been around, but like everything, things trend, things are changing, fashions change, so about drugs. When I talk to your kids at school, they don't know this picture on the right. They just don't know it. We all know it though, because for a whole 2 years we didn't wear socks with these white pants, right? We all did it.
Right.
But they know this one over here, Breaking Bad. Methamphetamine, synthetic drugs, they know that one. Different pressures with our kids. The thing about drugs is they're more potent now than they were back in the day. The doctor mentioned back in 1970, heroin was 3 to 7% pure, 3 to 7. I've had cases when I was with the DEA up to 90% pure. That's a different drug. We'll talk more about weed later. The weed back in 1990 when I graduated, 7 to 10% THC. Now 30, 40% THC. Different drug. What do we see here? This is all stuff we've seized. In this county, high-grade marijuana is number one. I think Sue will tell you, you get a lot of weed cases in your office, correct?
A lot.
Cocaine, still around. We don't see it as much as we did 10, 15 years ago,
Yep.
but it's still here. Prescription drugs, huge. I can go buy pills any day of the week. Heroin, that's why we're here tonight. It's there. It's out here in this county. It's out in Jefferson County, out in Walworth County. Club drugs, ecstasy. Don't see a lot of it, but still around. Methamphetamine, we'll talk more about that later. That's making a comeback. Ketamine, still see a little bit. And in this state, you got to talk about alcohol. We are a drinking state. Home of Miller Brewing, baby. That's what we are. Our kids are raised with that. It's not like that in other states. When you go out to Ohio to a church festival, it's on a Sunday. For 3 to 4 hours, they have a bake sale, some face paint in a dunk tank. Not here, man. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 2 beer tents. Huge, 6 beer choices. That's the way we're raised. I'm not saying it's wrong, because this didn't happen overnight, people. However, we got to recognize that this is how our society is raised. Our kids are raised. You go up north, kids are in bars and taverns all the time. That's normal life, because the bar is the bait shop and the grocery store. It's just how we're raised.
Absolutely, that's the reality in our community, and again, right or wrong, you make those choices for your own family, but recognize that's what we're up against. These drugs you can find in Waukesha County any day of the week. No problem.
What do you hear? It's just a little bit. Being a parent sucks, doesn't it? I'll tell you, I have 2 kids, it sucks. Being a parent sucks because it sucks to say no to your kids, but you got to do it. You got to empower yourself to say no to your kids. You got to be in their lives, and not their friend. You got to be searching the rooms, searching their phones, monitoring the miles on the car. They don't pay no rent or nothing. You own them. You own them. True. I'm serious. We all go back to our own high school, and this is what we think about. And I graduated in 1990, so you guys don't know how old I am. Back in the day, if you wanted to see a naked girl, you had to steal the Frederick's of Hollywood catalog from the mailbox. That was like a big deal. Woohoo! Right? Now what do? You give it to your kids every day. Naked girl, boom, there it is instantly. You want to know how to use heroin? It's on the phone. You want to know how to grow weed? It's on the phone. You got to monitor their stuff. You got to monitor their internet. It sucks. I know all you want to do go home and watch Thursday Night Football, but the fact is, you got to get in there and parent your kids. You got to know where they're going. If your daughter says, I'm going to Sally Jones's house, you got to call Mrs. Jones. Okay, dudes, dads, it sucks being a dad. Here's what you do. You got to man up, and you got to have your wife call Sally Jones's mom. And see what's going on, and ask them specifically. Right. Is there going to be parents there? Is there going to be alcohol there? Because you think everyone parents like you do, but they don't. And if you get a red flag, then say your little princess doesn't go, and she'll hate you. When you hear it just a little bit, you hear the doc talk about Allie Raditz. She graduated Kettle Moraine in 2007, 2008, 4.0 student, 4.0. She's on the tennis team, debate club. She was UWM 4.0, first semester, goes back. She's drinking a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of vodka, and she has a headache. Her girlfriend gives her 1/2 of one pill. 1/2 of one pill. Now, mom and dad, you don't think your kid will stick a needle in your arm, but if they're in love and a boyfriend or girlfriend tells them to take 1/2 of one pill, they'll take it. They'll take it. And she ended up dead. It's no big deal. I can handle it. It is a big deal. We have to send consistent message all the time. Alcohol, drugs are not acceptable. You can't say, hey, you can't drink. Then you say, well, hey, if your friends come over and everyone gives me their keys and everyone stays overnight, it's okay. No, it's a mixed message. Kids are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to mess up. We all did. But back in the day, our parents parented us. And when you messed up, the worst thing your mom would say is, Wait till your father gets home. Right? So you got to send a consistent message all the time. Because Sue is prosecuting these cases of all these kids. And parents go, I didn't know. You got to try to know. I know it's hard and it sucks, but you got to do it.
Well, and just as Chris just pointed out, the best piece of evidence we have in any drug case is that little mobile device he just pulled out of his pocket. I guarantee you we make more cases with a mobile device as a piece of evidence in a courtroom than anything else. So what do I need to look at somebody's cell phone? I need a court order. I need a search warrant. I need probable cause. You don't. As Chris said, you own those phones. You're paying for them. Your son or daughter has no privacy rights from his parents. He's got privacy rights from the government, but not from the parents. If you want to know what they're doing, I guarantee you it's all right there. They darn well better not have a passcode on that phone that you can't get into, or something is terribly wrong in your home.
Alcohol, we talked a lot about it already. Can you guys play the video in back or no?
Crash in Commerce City. We first told you about it yesterday afternoon. Air Tracker 7 over the crash on Highway 2 near East 72nd. 4 people hurt, 1 killed. 7 News reporter Lance Hernandez is in Commerce City. And Lance, police just telling you 4 of the people involved were students.
Jacqueline, they were in a Dodge Neon that was southbound on Highway 2, the 7300 block. We are told that the driver of that Neon went off the road, overcorrected, and then started fishtailing. Now, Air Tracker 7 was flying over that accident scene yesterday. Police tell us the driver ended up in the opposite lane of traffic and collided with a motorcycle. The 52-year-old driver of that motorcycle was killed. Today, Commerce City's police chief told us that alcohol and speed were factors in that accident.
The motorcycle rider was struck virtually head-on by the side of the vehicle, and he was thrown back a good distance from where the initial impact occurred.
Now, that accident happened about 3 p.m. yesterday. We are told that school got out around 2:30. We asked if students might have been drinking ahead of time, perhaps on campus. The chief says they're trying to determine if that's the case. We also learned today that the 16-year-old driver of that Neon simply had a learner's permit. By law, she was only allowed to have an adult 21 years of age or older in the car. Instead, she had 2 16-year-old friends and an 18-year-old friend with her. She is being investigated, we are told, for vehicular homicide. Reporting live in Commerce City, Lance Hernandez, 7 News.
Sue, would you prosecute this case as a murder?
Absolutely. Can this happen? Right. This could happen in our county.
This would never happen at Waukesha South.
Right.
Or Waukesha North. Or Waukesha West. How about Catherine Memorial? How about Arrowhead? Or Connemara High School? This happens. This could happen here easy. You got to send a consistent message. You just have to. Oh, shit. Wrong side of the stage.
She can't translate that, Chris.
They're supposed to bleep me back. It's not my fault. Hey. What's up? We're an end-user community. We're not growing poppies here. We're not growing cocoa leaves to make cocaine, but we're consuming a lot of those products. We have local dealer networks, and we see this all the time. I grab your money, your money, your money. I go to the city, Milwaukee, because that's our source city. I buy the dope. I come back. I give you your dope, and your dope. Now she dies. Am I responsible?
What do you guys think? Yes, absolutely. You just conspired to commit a felony to deliver or distribute controlled substances in the community. It's a felony just to do that.
Causing death.
If you cause death, you got a Class C felony, 40 years prison sentence.
Do you prosecute those cases in your office?
All day, every day.
More than Milwaukee County?
Per capita, absolutely more than Milwaukee County.
Have I told you when you're getting this? You're lucky to have her. You're damn lucky to have her. Because we're prosecuting those cases. We're going after not only me, but my source of supply and that source of supply. We keep going up the chain as far as we can go. We try to send in many people to prison. We got it. We're trying to send a message. Folks, I'm used to being on that side of the stage. And it's not pretty to see me run across, is it?
No, it's really not.
Marijuana, we got to talk about weed. Weed's number one. Okay, no one starts off spiking heroin in their arm. When you talk to addicts, recovering addicts, almost all of them start off 2 ways: with a little bit of weed, actually alcohol, weed. We try a pill, a little ecstasy, maybe a little cocaine. We work our way up to the big and heroin, right? The other way is you have some kind of catastrophic injury, pain, you get pain medication, and you become addicted to the medication. The pro-marijuana lobby in this country has done a fantastic job explaining to our kids that weed is no big deal. It's just a little bit of weed. It's God's gift to us. It'll cure cancer. It's medicine, all that stuff. The fact is, if you talk to most heroin addicts, they'll tell you they started off smoking weed. People say, hey, you can't get addicted to weed. It's not addictive. The fact is, everyone's body's differently. Everyone's body consumes products differently. Some people, when you take a prescription medication, you get no side effects. Other people get side effects. Some people drink alcohol, they're real fun. Some people drink alcohol and become real jerks. Everyone's body's differently. Same with weed.
Remember, the thing about weed is it's illegal, right? At least in Wisconsin. Where's your kid getting it from? If they've got it, who are they talking to? Where are they going? What are they spending their money on? Because you can't go down to Walmart or Quick Trip and pick up a bag of weed. So who exactly are they dealing with to get these illegal drugs?
Marijuana candy. Again, with the acceptance of marijuana legalization out west, we're seeing these products here. If you see them in your house, you got to get them out. Big problem. The commercial grade ones, they look like big Wonka bars, right? And you're supposed to take one piece of the Wonka bar, one square of the chocolate, and that's a dose. But you know us, we're Americans, we just don't take one little dose of chocolate. That'd be ridiculous. Plus, if you tell a kid not to eat the chocolate, what do? They eat the chocolate.
And so does your dog.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Check the stats in Colorado, and the vets are through the roof trying to treat the animals that get into this marijuana candy.
On the right side here is domestically, it was made in Wisconsin. And let me tell you, it kind of smelled like a tushy. And if you don't know that French word for tushy, I'm sorry to the translator. But you know what your tushy, right? So here's a little life advice. I asked the kid, well, why'd you take it? He goes, I don't know. It smells horrible. You know, so here's a little life advice from me to you. Pass this on to your kids. If anyone asks you to put something that smells like a tushy in their mouth, just say no. It's a good advice, trust me. Again, I'm on the wrong side of the stage again. Consequences of marijuana. Democratic governor of Colorado says reckless decision they ever made. Huge spike in fatal pot-related crashes. They have a huge homeless problem. They have a bunch of kids going to the ER. Remember I told you, we tell a kid not to eat the chocolate, what do? They eat the chocolate. It's not meant for children. She mentioned the vets. The dogs are getting in the stashes, dogs and cats, they're going to the vet. Big problem out there.
If you drive under the influence of marijuana in Wisconsin, it's just like driving under the influence of alcohol. Doesn't matter how much of it you have in the system. If you've got active ingredient of THC in your system and you're behind the wheel of a car, you're guilty of drunk driving.
Sue mentioned earlier, where are the kids getting it? When you have high dollar items, you have crime, right? These aren't honorable people that are selling dope, right?
No, they're greedy drug dealers, Chris.
And they're motivated by one thing, money. They'll do whatever it takes. So you hear from the pro-marijuana lobby, hey, weeds, everyone loves, when weed people, we love each other, peace, love, all that stuff. Hey, I followed the Grateful Dead around for a summer. How do you think it made my mom feel? Oh my God, it was horrible. It was great for me. Never touched it though, because I wanted to be a cop. But I lived that culture. The fact is there was crime there too. What's weed cost? Quarter pound, $1,200. That's for the good stuff. $1,200. If your kid has 4 ounces of weed, it's $1,200 worth of product at the house. If you're 15-year-old, that's $1,200 of cash. You got to reevaluate your parenting skills. When you have $1,200 worth of product, buying from a drug dealer. One more slide. Look at the phone. They like to put pictures of their weed on their phone. For whatever reason, that's what weed people do. They like to take pictures of their phone. So look at your kids' phones. When you have $1,200 worth of product, bad guys carry guns. This is out of the Walmart on Southwest Avenue in the city of Waukesha during a marijuana deal. It's just a little bit of weed, no big deal. That's a fully automatic Uzi with a silencer. Middle of the day at Walmart. It's just a little bit of weed. You got to keep sending the message to your kids. Cocaine, crack cocaine, still available. You don't see it as much as you did 10 years ago when I was with the feds, but it's still around because all drugs are around. Just right now we're seeing a lot of pills and a lot of heroin. 8-ball costs about $180 nowadays. Comes in that white little powder. That's 2 ounces out of a Oconomowoc, $2,200.
Real case.
Pills. Attorney General mentioned about drug deaths. We have more people die in this county from overdoses than we do traffic deaths. We have 2 major interstates and hundreds of miles of county roads. More people are ODing. That's a scary stat. More Americans abuse prescription drugs than cocaine, hallucinogens, heroin, and inhalants combined. You don't see weed on the list, but every other one's there. Pills are huge. They're big risks for our kids. They think they're safe. The doc told you about it earlier, but we've been telling them our whole life drugs are safe. It's our fault. I don't have a PhD in psychology. I'm not a doctor. I'm just some dude that barely graduated high school. But I've been telling my little princess this. Please take the medicine, it'll make you feel better. Please take the medicine, it'll make you feel better. Please take the medicine, it'll make you feel better. We've all said it. We've all said it. And subconsciously, I mean, again, I don't have a doctorate, I'm not a PhD, but it seems like if you've been telling them that their whole life, they've been raised telling you take the pill, it makes you feel better, it's in their brain subconsciously. So here's what I do. My princess is 3, my little dude's 8. So I gotta still fight the fight with you guys. You guys are a little generation ahead of me, but I'm coming up behind you. Hey, little dude. And I even talked to the princess too. You guys know drugs are bad, right? Yeah, Daddy. Shouldn't take no pills unless Mommy and Daddy give them to you? Yeah, Daddy. And I was taking medication the other day because I got high blood pressure. My little dude says, is that a prescription, Daddy? I said, yeah, that's bad. You shouldn't take that. Hey, maybe it's working. I don't know.
Yeah.
But oxycodone, hydrocodone, prescription-grade heroin. Doc told you all about that.
These drugs are so dangerous, just to possess one of them is a felony under Wisconsin state law. Always has been. This isn't news. The government, the legislature, the Controlled Substances Board has known forever the dangerousness of these drugs. It's just that it's skyrocketed into this huge problem in the last 8 to 10 years. But you may say, I'm not a drug dealer. Chris comes to me and says, hey, I hurt my back last night. And I say, I got a little Vicodin left from the last time I had a tooth pulled. Let me give you 1 or 2. I just committed a felony. I just distributed narcotics in the community. I'm guilty just as much as a drug dealer who's selling it for profit. You don't have to make a nickel to be a drug dealer under Wisconsin state law.
More overdose related to prescription drugs than any other street drug. More people are dying from pills. That's scary. Because you didn't come here to say, hey, the stairway to pills, it's a stairway to heroin. Yeah, but the pills are more dangerous. They're long-acting. The body takes a long time to digest them. Thank you. So you need to keep taking more and more and more. When you're addicted to pills, I talked with a dude named Connor, recovering pill addict, 150 pills every 3 days at $30 a pill. He lost his company. That's a lot. Eventually, most people don't own a company, they can't handle that. So they switch to street heroin, $20 a dose. So we're at 5 minutes.
Yep.
Doc talked about all the prescriptions we write in this country. He told you, hey, when he writes you a script, ask what it is. The doctors are not offended about that. Please empower yourself to ask the doctor what he's given you.
And what he's giving your kids, and do they need them?
Where do kids get them? 50% from the kids. 20% of parents give their teen unprescribed drugs. You got to pay the copay again. If you got an ear infection and the doctor gives you your medicine and then your kid gets an ear infection, don't do the Google Doc thing and Google it and say, well, here, I'll just give you one of mine, or I'll cut it in half. It doesn't work that way. Right. I'm like 220, 40, 60, 80 pounds maybe. I can't give my 70-pound little dude the same pill. It's not made for him. Number one sign someone will use heroin is they start using prescription pills. If they start abusing pills, the red flags better be up. You better start processing some options. What do? You got to monitor them, lock them up, dispose of them properly, engage and talk to your kids about drug abuse. When you leave the pharmacy, anyone count their pills? Well, you don't know if there's 90 in there. So when you're short at the end of the pill, you thought maybe the pharmacy shorted you. You'll mark your damn liquor bottle though, won't you? But you won't count the pills.
Lock up the booze, but not the narcotics.
Okay, Dad, it's time to man up again. 50% less likely prescription drugs, less likely to abuse prescription drugs when you learn it from the parents. The schools can't teach it. It's not their job. You got to man up and be parents. And you got to talk to your kids about sex, drugs, sexting, all that kind of stuff. You got to do it. And if you can't do it, you got to have your wife do it for you. Because she's tougher than you anyways, and she's probably smarter, because that's the best you could get. So just listen to her, because here's a little life advice, dudes. Just listen to her. It's a lot easier in the long run. Heroin, we're finally here. Most common drug recommended overdoses. When you cross the line, that does not hurt anymore. 22.1 years of age, average use, that's the average user. The reason is they work their way up from a little bit of weed, alcohol, weed, some pills, a little bit of cocaine, ecstasy, and they finally hit the big one. No one wants to be a heroin junkie. Heroin can be sniffed, smoked, inhaled, injected. Again, we talked about purity before. You have to go learn this on your own. You have to go and Google some of this stuff. It's all out there. Talk about purity. Look at the phones, drug, heroin, kit supplies. I'm pushing time. That's why I'm moving fast.
That's the stuff you got to look for in your kid's bedroom and in their backpack and in their car or wherever else.
It's like God's angels massaging your whole body and like your mind.
20-year-old April Arian remembers her first intravenous high well. It's a feeling after 4 years of heroin addiction she's never felt again.
It's never the same. And you just chase it. And then you start needing it. You don't want it, you need it.
At 16, April boasted a 4.2 GPA with scholarship offers to multiple colleges. While a hard partier on weekends, it wasn't until she fell in love that her life took a turn.
We met at a party and he just, we started rolling on ecstasy, doing stuff that we considered party drugs.
April started snorting heroin at age 16.
I was in a drug dealer's house on the east side of Dayton shooting dope. For me, it happened really quick. The first time I shot it, I was hooked.
April, who says she shoots up all day, every day, and a couple of hours without heroin makes her deathly ill or dope sick.
I'm homeless. I don't have anything.
The 20-year-old was kicked out of her home for repeatedly stealing from her mother to buy dope, a high that only lasts minutes or even seconds.
If I knew when I was 16 and did that first line of heroin, if I knew what was going to happen, I would have never touched it. You throw your life away.
The once vivacious, ambitious teen says there is nothing she hasn't done for a high.
You think your kid's not going to turn out that way? You think my mom thought I was going to turn out like this? I was the golden child, the perfect daughter.
Needle marks and collapsed veins, the 85-pound 20-year-old is a shell of her former self and hopes parents and teens are taking note.
So to think that you can play with it and do it on the weekends and do it with your friends because everybody's doing it and it's okay. It's not. You're playing with fire and you're gonna get burned.
4.2 GPA, perfect daughter, the golden child. Hooked the very first time. If you don't go, oh my God, when you leave here, oh my God. That sums it up right there. Hey, we're just partying, it's no big deal. Fell in love, tried it for the first time, hooked. What's it cost? $2 grand, $300. So it's a little white brown powder, that's what it looks like. We're at time, so that's how small it is. That's a $20 dose of heroin next to a penny. That's out of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, $1,000 worth. That's a day's worth, $100 worth next to a penny. There's a Narcan needle kit. What to look for? Bent spoons. If you don't have any spoons in your house, a parent that lost a child said I should have knew I didn't have any spoons in the morning because they used the spoons to cook the heroin. Scars, bruises, needles, rubber tubings, track marks, wearing long sleeves in the hottest weather. You got to Google this stuff and learn it. I can't teach you in 20 minutes. If you see all this stuff, it's going to be hard to see it. It happens gradually. Like this. Didn't happen overnight, everyone, right? Happened gradually. So if you see your sister's kid at July 4th and they look fine and they look like crap at Thanksgiving, you got to say something. See something, say something. You may be saving their life. Your sister may be ticked, but she'll get over it. Oh, drug dealers carry guns. This is out of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, 30 grand and 2 pistols. Mess around. We don't have labs anymore per se. The cartel's moving this into the country. And purity increased 130% during that time. Prices decreased. This is a meth lab in the town of Lisbon, right outside of Sussex. 23-year-old dude was making it in his parents' basement with his 3-year-old daughter. Ecstasy still around. Synthetic MDMA, Molly.
Getting very popular.
Very popular. This is bought off the internet, 20 grand worth of ecstasy. Off the internet with his mom's credit card.
Yep.
He also bought this. He's going to make his own. This is out of Elm Grove, Wisconsin. N-bomb, synthetic LSD, see it around. LSD is still around. Synthetic marijuana, don't see it a lot in this county, but it's big in Madison still. So we get the bleed over back here. Electronic cigarettes, don't let your kids use them. They're not for kids. What they do is they take marijuana wax and put them in and smoke it. 90% THC. Sorry we rushed it at the end. Please come see me if any questions. And again, empower yourself to go learn more about drugs than your kids know. You got to stay on them. It sucks, but it's a different world than it was 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Okay? You got to get in there and be involved. Have a good night. Thank you.
Absolutely. And let me just say one other quick thing.
Sorry.
No problem. We're not trying to stand up here and say you've got bad kids or you're lousy parents. We're really not. Please don't take that message. We're trying to tell you that every kid is susceptible to this because they're naturally curious, they're peer pressure, their lives are extremely challenging compared to when we were teenagers. And we just want you've got the tools, you've got the ability, they're living under your roof. You know what to look for now. Do some more homework, be aware, and hold them accountable. Hold yourselves accountable. Thank you.
I told you Chris was passionate, didn't I? I think if I said a few of the words he said on TV tomorrow morning, I might be fired. Not going to happen, though. All right, clicker. Right there? Good? All right. All right, our next presenter tonight, our next speaker is Chris Gleason. He is the director of the Rosecrans McHenry County and recently named director of the Wisconsin Rosecrans Clinics located in Hales Corners and over in Pewaukee as well. He is a certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor responsible for the oversight and the management of day-to-day operations at the facilities I just mentioned. Everyone, please welcome Chris Gleason.
So I'm going to try to, is this on? Is it there? There we go. I've been worried about this microphone all night because it's been taped to my, well, I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. Do you guys hear an echo? It's been a long day. Okay. I just want to leave this up here for a second and just kind of look at this as an opiate epidemic. And you've heard a lot of stories, and sometimes we've done this a lot over the last 2 years, and sometimes by the time I get up here, I'm overwhelmed with information. And that might be a little bit maybe where you're at tonight too. But I want you to think about the opiate epidemic. If we would name this something else that Dr. Westlake talked about it and Attorney General Schimmel talked about it, if it was something that impacted a larger group of people, there'd be all kinds of new laws in place and all that. So this is of epidemic proportion. And it's everywhere I go. I have the opportunity to speak both here in Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, all over the place. And no matter where I go and what I talk about, this is one of the main topics that we're looking at. So according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, basically 23.5 million people 12 years of age or older needed treatment for illicit drug or alcohol use. So if you think about that, that's a lot of people in terms of needs of treatment. One of the most stigmatized populations in the United States is those with addictions. Had an opportunity to work with this young man who's 19 years old, and he sat in my office and he talked about what it was like to be a drug addict at the age of 19. That there was something in his life that he was trying to fill. He was a good student, Division I soccer, Division I scholarship for soccer, had a very nice family, well-off family. They had somebody who cleaned the house. They had somebody who made meals for them. And the one thing he sat across from me and said, despite all of that, he really didn't feel like he had anything. That he struggled, that there was something missing. And the one thing that always made him feel better was using substances. So when you start to look at that, there's one of these people. He was one of these 23.5 million people that needed treatment for a substance, but couldn't talk about it because it was not part of the conversation you have around the table or the conversation you have at Starbucks. A friend of mine and I go to Starbucks, and we start talking about heroin in Starbucks, and people always kind of look at us weird. They've asked us not to come back now. But I wanted to make sure that it should be a part of everyday conversation until we get this epidemic down. So I think about that 19-year-old every single day, because one of the things he says is, what does a drug addict look like? So you saw some pictures today, right? I can tell you that today, standing on the stage, was that 19-year-old. What does a drug addict look like? They look like me. I've been sober for 29 years. Thank you, I appreciate that. My mom appreciates that too. But I think about that, 29 years, but at 19, my whole world was gone. My dad had removed me from my house and said, here, go live your life. We don't want you anymore. My use destroyed everything that was around me. And you know what? I guarantee you my parents never talked about it. They never talked about it. So I think about that today. You never know who is in recovery, and you never know who is a drug addict. So I want to talk about an overwhelming 93% of young adults need treatment did not believe that they actually needed treatment. Right? So sometimes we're smarter than we think that we are. So, sometimes people say, this is what you need to do, and you're like, yeah, I don't need to do that, but thanks for the suggestion. I appreciate that. And then down the road you go, man, I probably should have listened to that suggestion. Because sometimes when you start to look at addiction looks a lot like just simply behaviors, right? Why can't they just quit? Why don't they just change? Don't they know? Did you listen to the girl? It was the best thing that ever happened to her in her entire life. Every moment of every day for her was about that high. People still go, this is just a behavior. Addiction's just a behavior. It's kind of some moral failing. So I want to share an analogy with you. How many people like McDonald's? You can admit it. No one can see you. I can see you. I'm not taking pictures. How many people like fast food? All right, there we go. So about 3 years ago, I went to my doctor, and he took some blood work and took my weight, and took my blood pressure, and he said, Chris, I think we have a problem. Your cholesterol's out of control. Your blood pressure's out of control. You might stand losing a few pounds there. But I'm going to put you on some medication that will help you with this. And the first thing, and Chris mentioned it, the first thing I thought in my head is, they're going to put me on medication so I can continue to eat my fast food. See, I drive a lot, and so I'm on the road a lot. And McDonald's is my favorite place. I'll admit it. I'm okay with that. I memorized the menu. I ate at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and sometimes a snack on the way home. I was really depressed when they came out with the all-day breakfast menu because I'd quit eating it by then. But man, there's nothing like 3 bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits in the morning to get you going. Not kidding. So I took the medication, I went out of the doctor's office, promptly went back to McDonald's and kept eating. Went back in 30 days for my checkup, and the doctor said, Chris, we still have a problem. Cholesterol's high, your blood pressure's high, and I believe you weigh a little bit more than you did the last time you were in here. He said, Chris, you have to quit. If you don't quit this, the consequences are going to be significant for you. You need to quit doing this. And I thought, all right, well, I quit using drugs, I can quit McDonald's, right? And so as soon as I left the doctor's office, now I kid you not a mile away, there was a McDonald's on the left. About 3 miles down the road, there was another McDonald's. Do you know how many McDonald's there are in a town sometimes? I live in this small farm community in Illinois, and we have 4 McDonald's. I don't know why. So at that moment, I said, I'm not going to eat McDonald's anymore. And I would bargain with myself. All right, if the McDonald's is on the right-hand side of the road, and there's not a long line, I'm going. And I'd be driving, and every time it was on the left-hand side, See, I was the guy in the drive-thru line that made you wait. Have you ever been in the drive-thru? Should get things in 2 minutes, and you're like, why is it taking 5 minutes? It was me. Because I'm like, wait a minute, those fries aren't fresh. Can you put them back in the fryer for me? Can you get me fresh ones, a little salt on it? Yeah, I'll just wait right here for this. I was obsessed with this. I might still be a little bit. But that was a behavior. I tell you what, I haven't had McDonald's in almost 3 years. I'll admit I drink McDonald's coffee still, but I'm not doing the double quarter pounder cheese, the fries, the large Coke. I'm not doing the 2 snack wraps pack on the way home with the large fry and a Diet Coke. Because I know that, there should be some quality. I want some quality down the road. It's easy to give up that. That's a behavior. When people look at that, people don't get upset if I relapse on McDonald's, I guarantee you. If I relapse on McDonald's, people might be disappointed. If I go back out and use again, people go, yep, I knew he was going to do that, even though I've been sober 29 years. Let's talk about barriers to engage treatment. Sometimes people don't want to go into treatment because there's stigma attached to it. I can tell you that I've been doing this work for the last 25 years. I can tell you I've spent more time talking to parents about encouraging them to put their children in treatment, and not like away forever, maybe outpatient treatment or individual counselor, or maybe sometimes residential. Cannabis is a real problem. A lot of times people think, oh, there's really no big deal with cannabis. I've met more high school students that are struggling in school. Their behaviors have gotten out of control at home, but the families still don't want to talk about it because you know who they don't want to know. They don't want the school to be aware that their child might have a problem. I'm not going to take my kid out of school to go get treatment because their academic progress wouldn't be good. I can tell you what, if your child is using substances and they're in school, I guarantee their academic progress is not good to begin with. If we take kids out of school to go to a dance recital, we should be able to take them and be okay with it taking them out of school to go to treatment. So that's the stigma. We need to address that. Engagement into treatment. I went through IOP 3 or 4 times before I finally got it. I spent 2 years in a residential treatment program before I actually figured out that I needed to be sober. But I needed all those supports. Treatment is not a one-time event. The government says we need at least 90 days of treatment in order to get a full course, a full dose of treatment. Most insurance companies cover 22 to 23 days of treatment. Isn't that sad? How many people go to the doctor and get a prescription for strep throat? Do you take half the bottle of antibiotics or do you take the full course? I bet you most people in here take the half bottle because you start feeling better, right? And go, well, I don't need this anymore. Same thing happens in substance abuse treatment. When people start to feel better or parents start to recognize different patterns and behaviors in their kids and see some progress, they're like, well, we'll just pull you out of treatment. You're doing good. That's right exactly when we should keep them. It's like taking all of your antibiotics. It will go away if you take all the antibiotics. Trust me, I've learned it 3 or 4 times, so we know. We need to address pain. Dr. Westlake talked about it. Pain is one of the biggest drivers for people to go in, to get opiate prescription medications, and it doesn't take long from there to go where we've been talking all night. One of the things for treatment counselors to consider is this. A lot of treatment providers, I am not the expert in somebody who comes in for services. They're the expert in who they are, so we need to treat people like that. Think about that in terms of when you go somewhere, you want to be treated with some kind of dignity and respect. You don't want to be told what you need to do. You want to be a part of that process. People need to take ownership, right? A lot of times when we don't take that ownership, what do you think happens? Not successful, right? Anything in our lives, if we don't own it, we're not successful. So I started exercising about a month and a half ago. I was a former Division I scholarship athlete. I exercised enough in my life. That's what I always kept saying until the doctor said, let's lose some weight. So I started walking. We walk a mile a day. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but really, When you haven't exercised in 20 years, it's a lot. So we're working up to this 5K walk that we're going to do, and I thought about it. Every day we go out for this mile and a half, it became a mile and a half, became 2 miles, and then it became 3 miles a day to make sure that we're building up to that. I needed to be empowered. Somebody needed to say, Chris, you need to do something about this. I'm going to empower you to do that. They didn't shame me. They didn't do anything. They just said, I believe that this would be the best thing for you. So when we're thinking about substances, we're thinking about prescription medications, all that kind of stuff, we need to empower the community. That's what you all are doing tonight, is empowering the community. I'm always amazed at how many people show up, even when the Cubs are on TV. I had to put it in there once. I'm from Illinois. Not anymore. Everyone wants me to move to Wisconsin now. So, I've got like 5 offers. I got 5 houses I can live in now, which is really cool. So I'm just going to like rotate during the week. Skill development. Here's the biggest thing. 18 to 21-year-olds, their brains are still developing. So at 16, the brain's still developing. At 14, the brain's still developing. The average age of first use of substances in the United States is 11 years old. And that is a substance, that is somebody using with a friend, a family member, older brother or sister, and typically they're using in the basement of their own home. There's still a belief system, I'm going to repeat this again because we've said it a couple times tonight, that it's okay that people drink in their basement as long as nobody is driving. There's still a belief today that a little cannabis won't hurt you. I sat across from a mom whose son had been in residential 3 times and we were sending him back again and the court was taking away her parental rights. And she said, what is wrong with a little bit of cannabis? And we had a nice conversation about, this is the 3rd time we've had this conversation. Well, I don't believe it's wrong. I said, I understand that, but your son's life is completely off track. I'm fortunate and blessed to have a 21-year-old daughter. I know I don't look that old, thank you. And one of the things that I've talked about with her since she was little is that we have bad family history. My dad was an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. There's a lot of problems with alcohol in our family, so you need to choose wisely and choose what you're doing. And we talk about it all the time. Her friends would come over to our house, and I always wondered, like at prom time, they would come back to our house. At homecoming, they're at our house. I'm like, why do we have 30 kids in our house? And I asked one of the kids, and they said, Mr. Gleason, we come here because we know you won't tolerate alcohol in this house. We know it's safe. We know we don't have to make that decision. And I stayed up all night to make sure they didn't make that decision. But they knew that they could count on that piece. Skill development, though. Brain's not fully developed till you're age 24. When we get alcohol and drug addicts at a young age, they have 0 skill development. I have people who live in our recovery homes that can't cook, can't clean, can't do the laundry. That's the first thing we start with. I'm amazed at how many skills we don't have for high school students now that when I was growing up it was important. All right? How many people have a smartphone? Right? We talked about it. Chris talked about it. Other people talked about it. This is the gateway to non-communication. Right? This is a gateway to bad conversations, and did you really mean that? Are you upset with me? What's going on? All those kinds of things. Even my daughter and I have been had a problem with that. She'd be texting me, Dad, can you get me some water? And I'm like, you're sitting next to me on the couch. And we're texting back and forth, right? This technology gets in the way. We got to unplug. We've got to unplug as a family. We went to a restaurant the other night. 4 people sat down, pulled out their phones, and I sat there and I'm really amazed. And I asked everyone to put their phone away that was at the table, including myself, because that was the first thing we all did. All 4 of us sat down. We pulled out our phones. I go, well, we're not communicating. Skill development. We have taught a lot of that. It doesn't work from all the way over here, does it? We got to buy a new one of these. Like a range extender on it. Application of skills. So my daughter, one last story about my daughter. My daughter's a decent student in high school. She's a phenomenal student in college. She's going to be a social worker. I tried to talk her out of it. But we were talking about that application of skills, and she said, Dad, the one thing I didn't learn in high school was how to study, and I did not learn how to prepare myself to make adult decisions. If you're a parent today, we need to help our kids make those adult decisions that technology has taken away. An AP honors class is important, but it's not more important than learning how to actually study for content and material rather than to take a test. That's not a dig on the school system, honestly. Education on medically assisted treatment options. There are some options out there. They're not long-term options, but they're options that we always have to talk about for people who have opiate addiction. There could be some medical assisted treatment that we could apply to help save a life. Overdose prevention, we need to talk about it. Narcan, naloxone is life-saving material. What happens when people quit using opiates and we don't educate them on what could potentially happen if they relapse? Because most people will have a moment of relapse or going back to use, we call it. Relapse is not a part of the recovery process. Everyone says it is, but it isn't. It's called using. And so we talk about overdose prevention. People's changes their tolerance. Danger, we got to know what's happening in the area. Do you know what happens with heroin addicts when some people are dying? They go to that area to buy that heroin where the people died because they think it's good stuff. We need to talk about Narcan. If you have an opiate using person in your life, you should have Narcan in your home or be trained or know somebody who has it. Importance of ongoing recovery support and importance of continuing with the doctors if medication has been prescribed. If in doubt and you need help, you got to call, you got to reach out. There's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in asking for someone's opinion. There's a lot of resources out here in the hallway. We have a lot of resources at Rosecrans that we can talk about. This epidemic is not going away. These nights like this are awesome, but they are awesome in the fact that we're educating and informing. But if this is all you do tonight and you never speak about it at Starbucks, you probably don't want to go with me to Starbucks, though. And if you don't talk to your neighbor about it, and you don't talk to your best friends about it and all that, then this night was just a night, because this epidemic isn't going to go away. And I want to remind you that most of the people of these shoes up here were kids that we didn't think would ever go down that pathway. And there's hope. When I got early in recovery, I was really struggling, and someone said to me, Chris, there's hope. Hope against hope. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm really confused at this moment. And he said, Chris, even when there's no hope, there's still a little hope left. There's always something left there. Two things I'm going to leave you with tonight. One is that you have to unplug. Please put your cell phones away. I have a hard time with it. Trust me, I have two of them. I sometimes people are like, well, put your cell phone away, so I put that one away, then I'm pulling out the other one. It's just not a good thing. But spend some quality unplugged time with people. You'll find an amazing difference. SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, put out a thing about prevention. They said the number one prevention tool of any family that they could use is family dinner. Number one prevention tool, family dinner. Have the family around the table. Even in the chaos of my growing up with my family, we always had dinner. A lot of times we don't have dinner anymore. A lot of things get in the way. Make sure you have dinner at least 3, 4, 5, 7 times a week together. It's more important than anything else you will ever do. Family is the key component. Speaking of families, I would like to introduce to you one of my most favorite families besides my own, the Liebert family. They're going to come and talk about their experience in this process.
And now? All right. So, Chris, I gotta say, you threw your little Cubs thing out there. How'd the Bears do last week? Just wondering. I don't think they did well. So, I'm Tyler. This is the Liebert family, I guess. And what we're up here to do is show you guys, what we went through and how a family goes through this and how a family's affected by this. But honestly, thank you guys for coming tonight. The turnout was amazing. So we appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. So I'm gonna start our journey. Like I said, my name's Tyler. I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol really young. I started in 6th grade. It was introduced to me by older people, and honestly, the only reason I started drinking was because I wanted friends. Plain and simple. When I was younger, I was fat. Well, I wasn't fat, but I was squishy. And I got picked on all the time. I wasn't invited to people's birthday parties. I wasn't invited to people's houses because I was, fat and hyper, so it was just like a wrecking ball going through people's houses. So I had this need for friends. I had this need for friendship, and I wanted friends. So when older people introduced me to drinking and partying, I'm like, yes, this is my chance. This is my opportunity. So I jumped at the chance without thinking about anything else because, I believed them. I believed them that it was safe and all these different things. So I started drinking in 6th grade, and I was doing, I was smoking pot by 7th grade, and I was doing pills by 15. I was doing heroin by 16, 17 years old. And, I never planned on that. I never, when I started, I always said, I'll drink and I'll party, but I'm not going to smoke pot. And then once I started smoking pot, I'm like, well, I'm not going to do pills and I'm not going to do heroin. I'd never do that. But then I started progressing and I went down that path. And, I never planned on doing that. My plan for life was simple. I wanted to go to high school, go to college, and get rich. That was my entire life plan. But when you're sitting in 4th grade and the teacher asks you, what do you want to be when you're older? Typical responses are, policeman, an astronaut, marshmallow, something like that. Nobody ever plans on being a heroin addict. Nobody ever wakes up in the morning and jumps out of bed excited to try heroin. It doesn't work that way. It always starts with something small. It always starts with a drink, a sip, a puff. It always starts very small. I personally don't know a single heroin addict that just, started with heroin. They all started really small. And that's what I did. And it progressed. And by the time I got to high school, I was already getting arrested. I was already in trouble. I had already been expelled from schools. My first time getting arrested, I was 12 years old. And we'll get into that later. I know you guys are looking at my parents like, how could you not figure this out? But I was cunning. I was. And so I went to high school, and by that time I was using every day. And before drugs and alcohol, I was this hyper fun-loving little kid that was always in a good mood. I was always laughing. I was always smiling. I was always, I was just always in a good mood. But the farther I got into drugs and the more consequences I had, the more times I went to jail, the more that I felt everyone was against me, the less I became who I was. And the more I turned into this angry, vicious, violent monster that was never in a good mood. I didn't know what smiling was anymore. I didn't know what happiness was anymore. I just turned into this vicious little person that was, always making bad choices. And like I said before, I never planned on this. This wasn't my life plan. This wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. But, I barely graduated high school and I never went off to college. And, it started so small. But before I even left high school, it had just demolished every opportunity I thought I might have. And I didn't plan on it. And I'm going to keep saying that I didn't plan on this because nobody ever plans on it. And nobody ever sees it coming until they look back when they're trying to get sober and it doesn't work so well. I always told myself that, I'll quit whenever I want to, I just don't want to yet. I can stop whenever I want to, I just don't want to yet. And I would make up all these different excuses that I still hear from other people today. And you don't realize how bad it is until you actually try and stop, and you can't. And the other big thing I didn't realize is how much it affected everybody else. I always told myself, I always told everybody, this is my problem, this is my life. Just don't tell me how to live my life. This isn't affecting you. This is my problem. Leave me alone. Let me live my life how I want to. I didn't see how much it was affecting everybody until it was too late. In my family, I've got my mom, my dad, and my sister, and from each of them, I looked for something else. From my dad being a guy, just wanted his approval, just a pat on the back. From my sister, I'm not sure. She was my sister. She was cool and stuff, I guess. And then from my mom, She was that person that was always in my corner. She was always on my side. She was always there for me. Even if I was in trouble, she was there for me. And so, I looked for that relationship in each of them, but because I was getting arrested all the time, because I was going to jail all the time, and all these different things, I never got any of that from them. My dad and I fought like it was World War II every single day. It was yelling and fighting and screaming and just pure chaos. Ashley wanted nothing to do with me, and Mom cried every day because of what I was doing. Even in the beginning, even when it was happening, I didn't think it was my fault. I always thought, well, Ashley just, whatever, and Dad's just an angry jerk, and Mom she's Mom, she cries. But it didn't click to me that it was my fault that all this was happening. It did later, but it didn't at first. And so eventually my habit outweighed what I made at work, so I started robbing and I started stealing and I started taking anything I could, and I stole from everybody. But the people I stole from the most was my family, because they were the easiest targets. And I know that sounds bad, and it is. But they were the easiest targets. I knew eventually they'd forgive me. I knew eventually they'd, be okay with it, and I knew they wouldn't turn me in and this, that, the next thing, so I would rob from them, and I would steal from them, and I would take TVs and checks and credit cards and anything I possibly could to feed this habit, but I still didn't think I had a problem. I still thought I could quit whenever I wanted to. And so things just progressively continued to get out of hand, and I continued to get arrested, and just continued to make bad choices, and everything kept going downhill. And at some point, I started to realize what I was doing. At some point, I started to realize that Mom was crying because of me, Dad was fighting with me because of what I was doing, and Ashley didn't talk to me anymore because of what I was doing. And it clicked, and I'm like, I'm doing this to my family, and I hated it. I hated that I was hurting them all the time, and I couldn't stop myself from doing it. I hated that I had to keep using drugs because I couldn't stop on my own, and I knew what it was doing to everybody, and I couldn't stop myself from doing it. I don't know if you guys understand how difficult that is, knowing that you're wrecking your entire family and your life, and you cannot stop yourself from doing it. It wasn't a choice anymore. I had to use. I had to use to feel normal. I had to use. I just had to use. I had all these excuses in the book of why I had to use, but I hated it. I hated that every morning I would wake up wondering, why am I still here? What is the point? I'd wake up terrified because I didn't know what I did last night. I didn't know how much I stole or what car I crashed. I didn't know if I fought with Mom and called her the worst mother in the world, or I couldn't remember. So I would wake up terrified, not knowing what I did, and I wouldn't want to go downstairs. I wouldn't want to face my family because then I would have to face reality, and I didn't want to face reality. I just wanted to keep running. And so I'd wait till everyone left the house till I came downstairs. And it came to a point where honestly I didn't know a way out. Now, I got arrested when I was 12, and I got arrested a bunch of times after that. And it's not that they didn't try anything. It's not that they just, sat on their butts like, oh, he'll fix himself. No, I went through treatment at 15. I went through treatment at 13. I went through treatment at 17 and 18 and 19 and 21. I went through multiple different treatments. And, at that point in my life, that taught me that, all right, well, treatment's never going to work. How am I going to get out of this? And I hated life. I hated everything about it. I hated that I couldn't stop hurting them. So I started to figure out that maybe my only way out of this would be death. Maybe if I die, maybe my family can finally get some peace. Maybe if I die, maybe my family can finally lead the lives they were supposed to lead without me having to drag them down anymore. And I believed it to my core. So I would wake up in the morning wondering, why am I still here? What's the point? And then I would pray that I wouldn't make it to the next day, because I didn't see another way out of it. And eventually it came to a point with my family too, where they had tried everything. They had tried multiple different treatments and counselors and Suboxone and methadone and all these different things, and nothing was working. So they didn't know what else to do either. So they kicked me out, and I went down and I lived in Milwaukee in a drug house for a little bit, and I was by myself, and I was, I hated everything about life, and I was literally on the verge of taking my own life when I got a phone call from Mom. And she goes, you've got two options. You can keep doing what you're doing, but we never want to see you again. You're not welcome to our house. You're not welcome to call us. You're not part of this family anymore. Or you can get help again, and we'll support you 100%. And so I went into treatment and spent 5.5 months in treatment. And like Chris said, they teach you how to cook and clean, and well, they tried, but they didn't do so well with me. But the most important thing treatment teaches you is, once you're an addict, you're always an addict. That never goes away. It's something that's always going to be there. There's no magical pill that you can take and all of a sudden you're not an addict anymore. No, for the rest of your life you have to work at staying sober. And once you start using drugs or drinking at a young age, you stop growing mentally. So me, I was this 11-year-old kid trapped in a 21-year-old body, and I didn't know how to do anything the right way. I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't know how to make doctor's appointments. I didn't know how to conversate. I didn't know how not to lie. I didn't know how not to steal. I didn't know how to hold a job. I didn't know how to do anything. So treatment, they teach you how to try and do that. And they teach you that once you're an addict, you're always an addict. It's funny, I did a radio interview with TMJ4. It was about a month and a half ago. And the host asked me, he's like, so you've been sober. How do you feel like you dodged a bullet? And I looked at him and honestly, no, I haven't dodged any bullets. I'm still outrunning that same bullet that was shot at me 8, 9, 10, 12 years ago. I'm still running from that bullet. But I just have to keep staying strong enough to keep outrunning it. The day that I stop trying to be sober is the day that bullet will catch up to me. Like you heard from Tim, like you heard from Chris, and when you relapse, most of the time you don't make it out of that. So as long as I keep running, I can keep dodging that bullet. But thankfully, I've been sober for almost 8 years now. Thank you. And honestly, it's hands down been the best time in my life. I don't have to worry about court or going to jail or getting pulled over for drugs, at least. Speeding maybe every once in a while, but I don't do that ever. But I used to think that freedom was being able to do whatever I wanted to with whoever I wanted to, whenever I wanted to. That's what I thought freedom was. But freedom to me is being able to live with the choices that I make every day, and I can do that now. I don't have to be afraid of what I did last night because I can remember. I don't have to be afraid of any of that. And things that I never thought would actually nobody thought would ever happen, have happened. I'm married. Nobody thought that would ever happen. I have a 7-year-old son. I have the support of my family. I own my own business. I've accomplished things that I never thought I could, but it's only because I'm sober. So that's my story. Thank you for listening.
We all have different mics here. So hi, I'm Ashley. I am Tyler's older sister. I'm 3 years older than him. And I made different choices in high school because my best friend died when I was 16 years old in a drunk driving accident. But I was definitely heavily impacted by Tyler's decision to use. So when Tyler and I were little, as you can kind of see from some of our goofy pictures, we were inseparable. We did everything together. We played Ninja Turtles, we played video games, we played house, which he will never admit, but
he's looking for the picture.
He did. We didn't have cell phones back
I'm waiting
then,
for them to show a picture of me actually playing house.
I will find one. But we were inseparable. We did everything together. And as we got older and more involved in our own sports and activities, as I was doing well, he obviously started making different choices. And at first I thought, he's a teenage boy, boys get in trouble, he'll grow up and he'll grow out of it. But he did not. And I began to hate him. And I know hate is a very strong word, but I hated him for my parents fighting all the time. I hated him for my mom crying every single day. I hated the fact that every time the phone would ring at our house, everybody would jump. Is this the phone call that he's never coming home again? And the thing I hated the most was here was somebody I loved and cared about so much, yet he could turn around and hurt me so badly. And when Tyler talks about there was points in his life where he felt like there was no end to this, and he thought it'd be easier if he just died. There were times where I felt like, if you're gonna take him, just take him, because we can't watch him suffer anymore, and we can't live like this. And being a sibling, I felt like I had to be perfect, because maybe if I did everything right, if I got the best grades and I was the best at my sports, maybe I could keep my family together and make up for all the wrong that he was doing. And I also felt really neglected by my parents, because they were so focused on him and what he was doing that they kind of forgot about me. I had to grow up on my own. And I got married before Tyler went into treatment, and I couldn't even have him stand up in my wedding because I didn't think he'd be alive for it. And so when Tyler decided to go into treatment, I was like, yeah, right, this isn't gonna work. We've been down this path. So it took me a good year and a half to trust him and want to be around him again. But I can't tell you how lucky I am that I have my brother, that he's actually wearing his shoes today. I couldn't imagine my life without him. He's my best friend. He means the world to me. I was the best man in his wedding. But I can speak for my family and say that, you know, we do have survivor's guilt. It's really nice to come up here and share a story with you that, you know, Tyler is doing well, but we think of all those families that aren't as fortunate as us. And I also do know that at any moment, Tyler could go back to using drugs and we could lose him. So we take every day that we have him and we make the most of it. So thank you guys so much.
Hi, I'm Rick. It's been 8 years, and as you can tell, it's pretty emotional for all of us, so please bear with me. I'm not the same man that I was back then. I was a very angry man, and I was mad because of what Tyler was doing to Sandy. You know, I watched her for many years in a very depressed state. There were some times it get so bad for her, she couldn't even get herself out of bed. But you know, I don't remember a day that went by. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That she didn't get out of bed. I'm sorry.
I can't remember a day that went by. You're okay.
I'm okay. You know, it was the only time that she wasn't crying or we were fighting was when Tyler was in jail. And maybe that was because we knew that he was safe and he wasn't going to hurt anyone. Or maybe because we weren't going to get that phone call. Or maybe it was I wasn't going to find him in the morning on the garage floor. Is this the day that he's no longer with us? And I was mad because he was tearing my family apart. Even Ashley moved out of the house because she no longer could handle it. I honestly didn't blame her. I wish I could have went with her. But as what Ashley said earlier, we as parents, we neglected her. When she needed us the most, we weren't there for her. And as a father, it was my job to protect my family. I was unable to. It was out of my control. But you know, I was extremely mad at Tyler because he just wouldn't stop. No matter what I did, the yelling, the fighting, our so-called house arrest, Tyler just kept on using. But you know, there was something I didn't realize as a father. I didn't realize Tyler couldn't stop. And I come from a family of drugs and alcohol. My father was an abusive alcoholic, and my brother was a drug addict. Today, my brother sits in prison, and he'll probably be there for the rest of his life because of the choice he made with the drugs. So you know what? I thought I knew everything about drugs and alcohol. Quite honestly, the only thing I knew was what devastation that it could do to a family. And it wasn't until we met a man by the name of Charlie was this all explained to me. Charlie was Tyler's drug and alcohol counselor at the time, and he told us that Tyler had crossed that line of addiction. The drugs and alcohol had taken over. But the next thing that he told us as a family was that we had to change as a family in order to help Tyler. We had to change as a family in order to help Tyler. You know, I can remember looking at him, and I go, what in the heck are you talking about? Why do I have to change? Tyler's the one that has the problem. And as I said earlier, I was angry. Those were not the words I used. But, you know, we did change as a family. And we did start to see a little change in Tyler. And we saw a little hope. Because quite honestly, there was a point in our lives that we didn't think he had a tomorrow. And I know this part's going to sound really bad, but Sandy had his funeral planned. Tyler was 80 pounds. For Pete's sake, I used to call him the Walking Dead. How bad is that? His own father. But the drugs and alcohol had sucked the life right out of Tyler. But I got to say today, we are very, very fortunate as a family because we still have our son. Because over the years of doing this, we have met a lot of families that were not so fortunate. And I just want to take this time, as Tyler said, I'm so proud of him today, of where he's come, the man he's become. I can't imagine what he has to go through every single day for the rest of his life because of that stupid little choice that he did make. And I'm going to end on this. I see quite a few kids out here tonight. For you kids, it's ultimately your guys' choice, so make the right one. And for you parents, please, no more than what your kids do about drugs and alcohol, because trust me when I tell you this, you will not want to spend one single day of the hell that we went through. And Sandy will finish her journey. Thank you.
I don't need to be double mic'd. Thank you. So as you can tell from what everybody was saying about me, I was absolutely devastated by Tyler's use. I lost myself as a mother, I lost myself as a wife, and most importantly, I lost who I was as a person. You know, I blame myself for not seeing the signs at the beginning, him hanging out with different friends, older friends, the friends not coming around, he was withdrawn. He had a different attitude towards us as parents. He started to become a little less respectful, a little bit more argumentative. He became very secretive. He would go up in the bathroom, run the shower on the phone. And when I did see an indication that Tyler was perhaps dabbling with drugs and alcohol, I chose to ignore it because I didn't know what to do or where to go with it. I actually thought it was just a phase that he was going through, and that alcohol, drugs, jail, addiction would never happen to our family. We live in Waukesha County. We're a local family. But it did. We were a very close family. Ashley and Tyler were very involved in sports. Rick and I were very involved in their sports and in the community. But my gut, it did happen to our family. My gut was screaming, and my gut kept saying, Sandy, you've got to do something about it. I have to say that if Tyler was diagnosed with any other illness or disease besides drugs and alcohol, we would have been overwhelmed with advice, help, a shoulder to cry on, casseroles maybe. But I have to be honest, because it was drugs and alcohol, we were completely shunned by both our... Did I say something wrong? Casseroles? I don't know where that came from. If you wonder why they... I don't... That's why they give me a sheet. Casserole. So we have to lighten them. We do. It's a very serious subject, and sometimes we have to laugh. But if it had been anything else, but we were shunned, and we were shunned by both family and friends because it was due to alcohol and drugs. Looking back, I've got to admit how crazy that I thought that I could fix him, that I could talk him out of his problems, that I could lie for him, that I could cover for him, that if I made his life so perfect because I did everything for him, that he would actually quit because there would be no pressures on him. Crazy, crazy thinking. Little did I know that I was really enabling him to use more. If I had known what I know now, I would have intervened much sooner. I would have had let Tyler face his consequences. I wouldn't have bailed him out as many times as I did. I would have gotten him the help he needed sooner. And I would have gotten him the help he needed sooner when he was showing the very, very early signs. Just like you would if you were seeing early signs of a illness or disease in your child. You would go ahead and you'd get the right help for them right away instead of thinking it's something that's going to pass. I'd like to share very briefly with you what it was like living with Tyler as an addict. Tyler destroyed my life, his dad's life, and Ashley's life for 11 years. We can never get those 11 years back. Tyler would yell, scream, swear at me at the top of his lungs at what a terrible, pathetic mom I was, and how much he hated Dad and I because we were the reason for all of his problems. He would push me against the wall, punch holes in the wall around me, and verbally abuse me until I would finally give in and give him what he wanted. And even as I was crying, curled up in a ball, scared of my own son and his anger, he would walk away from me laughing and not care because he got what he wanted. And then there was a soft side to Tyler when he was trying to stop. When he was crying, withdrawing from the vicious drug, sweats, chills, vomiting, body on fire, begging to not let him die and to help him. But I always knew that in 2 hours he would leave and seek out the drug, and the vicious cycle of addiction would start taking over our lives again. It was devastating to watch, and I can't even explain how I felt watching Tyler choose drugs and alcohol over his life. Tyler embraced treatment after we told him that we would support him 100% like he said, but we as a family were all also prepared to, if he did not accept the help that we gave him, we were prepared to walk away from him. Did I do anything different than any family out there that is facing addiction because my son is in recovery and is alive? No, we are just so lucky to have our son and to be a family that is whole again. So thank you.
Can I have my mic on, please? Thank you. All right, so these shoes represent so much more than you can imagine. And I promise we'll get you out of here really soon. I just have to close with this. So these shoes represent people in our community that have overdosed and died from drugs or died from some sort of drug. And the sad part is a lot of these shoes are 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds. It's astonishing. Now, I'm lucky enough that I get to wear my shoes, but these are about the chances that you have of surviving this if you don't intervene early. When I sit down and I look at these shoes, I don't just see shoes. I fill these shoes with people I know. I've lost 34 friends to this. So when I sit there and I start filling these shoes with the people that I know, it hurts. And the reason we do this is because we don't want to fill these shoes anymore. We don't want to fill up these bleachers. We want to start taking these shoes down. There's no amount of apologies that can even begin to touch the amount of grief that sits behind every pair of shoes here. So what we want to do is educate you, and hopefully you go out and tell 20, 30, 40 people what you learned here tonight so that we can all as a community start fighting against this and start taking these shoes down so that no more of our kids die, no more of our brothers, no more of our sisters, no more of our sons or daughters. Thank you for coming tonight, and that's our show.